Hello, and oh my god, is that DLSS 5? I can't wait to see what it looks like. Oh, oh my god. Oh my god. We're really doing this, aren't we? So earlier this week, Nvidia announced DLSS 5, and I don't think I've ever seen such a universally negative reaction to a software feature announced by Nvidia. And that's for good reason. See, a while back I made this video about AI on my second channel, and in it I basically just talked about, my concerns about it and why I was kind of terrified about it. And I've been wanting to make a sequel to that, but I wasn't necessarily in a rush to do it. But since Nvidia decided to do this, let's talk about it. So let's get the important part out of the way right now. Generative AI sucks, and it sucks for almost everything and in almost every way. But it's especially bad for art, anything involving creativity. And that, of course, includes video games in addition to just images, videos, and music. Whatever form it takes, art is inherently human. It's human expression. Every piece of art, everything you create, is the culmination of your vision, your ambition, your goals, and most importantly, everything that has happened to you up until that moment. You have the unique ability to create something that is entirely filtered through your lens. Every word you write, every stroke of your brush, every animation you make in a video, every cut, all of it, only you can make art that's truly yours. Even these videos, I am not at all on the level of some of the more popular and better edited YouTube videos, I know that. But only I have my posture, my opinions, my goals, the things that I want to convey, my style, my way of speaking. Only I can make something that's truly mine. If it wasn't made by me, it wouldn't be my art. And if it's not made by a human, then it's just not art at all. There is no vision being conveyed when something is generated by AI. It is just an amalgamation of ideas that have been stolen from someone somewhere else, and usually more than one person. Just everything is stolen and mashed together to form this bland mixture of things. And we've already seen that spread to video games too. Call of Duty Black Ops 7 infamously had AI-generated images in some of the menus. Our creators used AI-generated voices for some parts of the game, I'm not entirely sure what. And we've even had Google convince some reporter at The Verge that they could generate a worm that is basically just ripping off Zelda Breath of the Wild in just about every way, and saying that as a good thing. It's crazy that has even happened, but it has. And to be clear, that's not even the only way that AI has hurt gaming, because it has hurt the prices of components with things like RAM and storage right now, and GPUs before that. Things have been pretty bad out there. And that brings us back to Nvidia. In terms of GPU pricing, they've already caught a lot of flack because their consumer GPUs right now are insanely expensive, and Nvidia has clearly shown a preference to prioritize data center customers and sell GPUs for AI and all of that, instead of making more consumer GPUs for people that just want to play games. But when it comes to software features like DLSS, Nvidia has actually been doing a lot of cool stuff over the years, and they're pretty beloved for it. DLSS stands for Deep Learning Supersampling, and it was announced back in 2018 alongside the GeForce RTX 20 series of graphics cards. And I remember how they explained the idea behind DLSS and how it works, and I just thought it was so cool because it was more using AI, but more so as the machine learning kind of AI that you used to hear about well before this generative AI thing all started ramping up. So the way that DLSS would work in concept is that you have this AI machine learning model, and you would show it an image at 1080p, an image from a game, and you show it that same image at 4K, and you'd basically be telling it that when you receive this image in 1080p, you're supposed to generate this image in 4K. It's supposed to look like this. And you do that, on Nvidia's side, you would do that by feeding it thousands and thousands and thousands of images like this. This 1080p image turns into this 4K image. And this allowed the GPUs to become much faster because it took a lot of the stress out of the render portion of a GPU, the part of the GPU that renders graphics at this 3D rendering and rasterization, which is a proper term. And it allows that to happen at a lower resolution, because then there would be this AI component that would upscale that to a higher resolution with much higher quality than typical upscaling technologies. So you could get a lot more detailed visuals and advanced features like ray tracing, and you'd still get the smoothness because and the high resolution, because the DLSS would be able to upscale that using AI to make the image look clearer without hurting the performance of the rasterization process. Again, this was super cool, and at the time it was really exciting how much more performance you could potentially get out of it, especially because, you know, this is also when they introduced ray tracing, and the ray tracing was super heavy, it was very demanding in terms of hardware, so DLSS kind of helped bridge that gap so that you could still play the same games looking way better without hurting the frame rate that you would get out of them as much. And even though the DLSS has evolved, it kind of sort of kept that same general principle. It just stopped having to be trained for each individual game and started, you know, being trained more globally. But it was still that same principle. You know, you take one image, the rasterization portion of the GPU generates a lower resolution image, feeds it to the AI portion, and the AI portion then upscales it to look better on a high resolution screen. That was cool. And then they even expanded that to include frame generation, so it is kind of the same principle, but it could generate entire frames of images. So it would look at one frame and the next frame that was going to be displayed, and it would determine all of the frames in between that could be added to create a higher frame rate and a smoother experience while you're playing. That was also very cool. There were some downsides to it at first, but it's also very cool. So up until now, DLSS was known for some really cool, very useful features. So what the heck happened with DLSS 5? DLSS 5 completely abandons this more machine learning approach that we've known DLSS for so far, and it completely embraces generative AI. Now, Nvidia tried to make this sound very advanced and saying that it's the technology, the way that, you know, this applies realistic, photorealistic lighting to environments, and it's anchored in the 3D space that the developers design and all of that. Like, it sounds really fancy and it's going to be very realistic. But what we actually got is basically an AI slop filter. It's the equivalent of what you see on Twitter of, you know, people using AI to enhance certain characters because their official design is like too woke or not sexy enough, and unfortunately that happens a lot. And this is what they did to Grace from Resident Evil Requiem. Like, this makes me genuinely mad because that what Grace looks like with DLSS 5 on, that's not Grace. That's not what she looks like. She doesn't wear lipstick. She doesn't have these intense sort of sexy, soulless looking eyes staring at you. She is a character that's designed to be human. She has a story, she has a backstory, she has an important backstory. She's an FBI agent, she's strong, she has a lot of trauma in her past, and she obviously that affects her personality as well. And like, her official design is obviously done to convey that perfectly. I think it is perfect at conveying what Grace and who Grace is supposed to be. What DLSS 5 does is just completely strip that away to make her look hot, I guess? Like, I hate it. I absolutely hate everything going on in this frame. Maybe because I also like Grace as a character very much, but this just sucks. But Nvidia will tell you, oh, but developers have full control, you know, they can implement this, and again, it's anchored in 3D space and whatever, and they can create masks to like avoid applying filters to certain areas of the game and whatever. And to that I say, is that really true? Because what you showed us, even the developers weren't on board with this. Capcom has come out and say that they want to distance themselves from generative AI and that they were surprised to see their game here. Ubisoft says they learned about it at the same time as the general public. So what's going on here? And even if they fix that, if they go back and they actually give developers control, or if they improve how it works, or whatever, this is what they wanted to sell you on. Like, that, this is what they wanted to show you now. They didn't have to, DLSS 4.5 is like, what, 2 months old? I believe they announced that at CES, if I'm not mistaken. And it's like, what's going on here? Why was this necessary? You didn't have to announce this now if this isn't what you wanted people to see. And yet, you went behind the backs of developers and showed their games in a worse light than it used to be. Everything about this feels like garbage. It feels like they're trying to reduce games and art to the lowest common denominator of visual styles, the thing that is most bland and most generic, and it is straight up trying to remove the human element from art and just destroy art, straight up. It is destroying the art that humans created. Also, did you catch this frame? What the heck is going on here? Like, where did all these wrinkles come from? This looks like a cartoon, not at all like the original character. What the heck is this? So, to go back to that video that I made before and that I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I don't really think I'm afraid or terrified of AI anymore. I'm just tired, because the more time goes on and the more I see what these people and mega corporations want AI to be used for, the more I'm convinced that there is no positive contribution that generative AI has for society. It's only here to devalue humanity and human art and expression, and it's going to implode upon itself sooner or later. Generative AI, LLMs, ChatGPT, Gemini, all of these things just suck, and I cannot wait for them to just be gone and laughed at like all of the other things that tech bros tried to convince us were the future, like crypto, NFTs, and the metaverse. We don't need any of this. It's only making things worse. And that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.